use it in the film as one of the fellows that was interviewed, Christopher Noel. And I immediately said, man, that almost sounds like that samurai chatter. He said, that's exactly what I thought. And I was like, that's crazy, because you just don't hear, other than Ron's most famous incidents that are recorded and talked about in his book, Voices in the Wilderness.
Yeah.
You just don't hear that much. And then now, all of a sudden, in the last 3 weeks, I've had, 2-3 different people talk about they've heard this. And to me, it's just, is that Bigfoot, or is there something going on that's non-Bigfoot? I don't know, but
yeah,
that's just kind of that is very weird that now you're starting to have other people claim that they are hearing what sounds like the samurai chatter in the woods. And I mean, look, I've been in the woods we've officially gone squatching 3 times now since we've been doing this. We were definitely the armchair researchers, enjoyed the subject, but we just never went out and looked. And one of the things that one of the researchers took me out and was showing me, and I had my headphones on and my camera going, and I had my shotgun mic on the camera and everything. So if you know anything about them, you can hear deep out there.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I heard what sounded like monkeys fighting back and forth. And I was like, oh, my gosh. I've just heard a Bigfoot. I've heard Bigfoot, And I literally was like, you've got to hear this. And he's like, you know what that is? And I'm like, what? He's like, that's a barred owl. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, that's a barred owl. And another owl has gotten into its territory. Well, see, that's how people misidentify stuff, is because you go out there with Bigfoot on the brain and everything, and you hear something like that.
Yep.
It's an owl, a foot-tall owl in a tree with feathers, but you thinking it's a Bigfoot, well, it's one of those things. You can mistake stuff like that in the woods, but when you hear something that sounds like it's talking beyond a chatter or something, it's just, it's hard to tell. You can have mistaken identity, because I proved that right there, and he was hoping to hear that on purpose to show me that, look, see, that's what people hear, and they think they're hearing a Bigfoot, but to have yourself and a couple other folks, including, one of the authors that I just interviewed, shared a private recording with me, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's just crazy, so
yeah, I can't wait to hear that. Because you said he recorded that around Vermont, right?
Yeah, no, and see, that's what the crazy thing is, and one of his books is Next of Kin, Next Door, and he says that more and more, you don't have to go in the middle of the wilderness, that they're literally living close up to civilization, still wooded, but just right on the outskirts. And so literally this recording that he shared with me was just within a few miles of the Montpelier, Vermont, the capital of Vermont.
Yeah.
Now, you got to understand, Montpelier is in the middle of the forest and mountains itself, but still, they could be out in the middle of nowhere, but they're right up these sounds and stuff, and these structures and stuff that he's found are, in the little micro forest right around the capital there. Crazy.
It sounds so similar to what I'm experiencing right now, because I go just a couple miles from my house. There's this little couple acres of wilderness, or not wilderness, couple acres of forest, and that's where I'm finding some amazing stuff and hearing these sounds, and I definitely think they're a lot closer than we think. I found some weird mounds out there too that look almost like, it looks like about 6-7 feet mounds in the woods, and I'm wondering if it's, if there's Native American graves back there, if that, because some of the people in the live stream I was doing, when we started hearing the chatter, they said it sounded like a mix between like a native language, and they said it did sound like the samurai chatter.
Well, see, and that's the thing, is a lot of the Native Americans and First Nations, they call them another tribe. And so there has been people say that they sounded like they were speaking, a Native American or Cherokee type language or something. And so, there's, one of the books that I've just gotten, if you can find it, and it's out of print, it was originally printed in 1902, and then it was reprinted in 1974, and I got a hold of the 1974 one, which is still freaking old, but
wow.
James Mooney. He was commissioned by the Smithsonian Institution to embed himself with the Cherokee Nation, and he wrote down all of their oral traditions and stories and stuff. It's called The Myths of the Cherokee and Secret Formulas. And if you ever get a chance, you need to check it out. And there's some stuff, excerpts of it online and everything, but it was fascinating to get the book in my hand. I'm still one of those guys. But there's literally a couple of the tales that they talk about, the rock giants and the slant-eyed giants, and they're talking about Bigfoot creatures, you know, and some of the weird things they can do. And this is from a guy who was, you know, on an official government-type thing, and he was literally writing down their history, their religion, their, you know, all their stuff like that, and their herbal stuff and everything, and he was recording this faithfully, and you know, you've got these stories in here, and a lot of them, like I said, they refer to them just as, it's a matter of fact. They don't wonder whether Bigfoot exists. They've got like over 68 different names across the continent for it, you know.
Yeah, I've been looking into that some, and I found one from one of the tribes that lived in the Alabama areas. I can't remember exactly what it was called, but it would kind of describe some kind of like ogre creature. I'm trying to find it, but yeah, it's definitely very interesting, and something me and, you know, Scott Martis, he does like the Lake Champlain monster stuff, and he had brought up about,
I've heard of them, but yeah.
He had brought up some of the like horned serpent stuff and other legends that the Native Americans had about that kind of stuff as well. And I think
they say history is written by the winners, and of course I've got Cherokee in me, and we took all of the Native Americans and shoved them onto reservations, and then we basically didn't share their history. But if you listen to their history and everything, they talk about a lot of this stuff that we have just chosen to ignore, you know. And then when it comes to Bigfoot and they think you're crazy, well, they've believed in it all along, you know. It's just a matter of fact kind of thing, you know.
Yep, and I think that's, like, I hate, you know, that all that they've had to go through and everything, but I love their history and their stories and everything, because I too think it's real, you know.
Yeah, and it is. It's fascinating. You can't research Bigfoot and Sasquatch without researching the native perspective on it, because the native perspective is where you find out a lot of this stuff that people are thinking, even within the community, the woo crowd are going, you know, oh, they're just crazy, dude. There ain't portals, and they ain't dropping them out of UFOs. But if you interpret it backwards into what the Native American stories tell and everything, well, if you look at it that way, it would explain why, you know, well, it was there and then it looked like it disappeared. Well, that's because a lot of them believe that when they die, they become a spirit of when the Sasquatch dies, they become a spirit in the forest. Okay?
Yeah.
You know, so if you look at it through that lens, then it would make you know, and it's one of those things, if you can be open-minded enough to think, well, it could be doing this and it could be doing that, then it makes a whole lot of the impossible answers to the crazy questions seem like, well, you know, he said it looked like it disappeared, and it looked like it disappeared to me, you know.
Yeah.
Whether it was camouflage or whether it was just able to change our perception or send out some kind of a brain wave that we don't understand, electromagnetism, whatever, that, you know, literally changed what we were looking at so that our eyes just didn't see that, you know, their vibrational frequency. You can get into all that kind of stuff. And
Definitely.
When you start hearing this, as crazy as it is, you kind of are going, you know, if you just start kind of giving a little bit more thought to this, it sure would make us, the rest of us, not seem that crazy and go, oh, well, you know, you can actually explain why that did that, but yeah, it disappeared, you know.
And as someone who does, you know, I do both paranormal and the Bigfoot stuff, and when doing the paranormal things, I've heard disembodied voices and seen full-bodied apparitions and shadow figures and things that I couldn't explain. So I could definitely see some of the Bigfoot activity being more spiritual, and it's just
that's one of those things that you get into that, and it could be good and it could be bad, and I'm sure that doing what you do, there's a lot of stuff that you don't need to be fooling with, touching, trying to communicate with. Well, we have no idea. There's a lot of folks that talk about having really good interactions with these creatures, and then there's other folks that have gotten the bejesus scared out of them, and so, are they good? Are they bad? That's another thing we're going to kind of, talk about in here. We've got a guy going to talk about the whole, Nephilim and the giants of old thing, and are some of them, benevolent, or some of them malevolent, kind of thing.
Yeah. Man,
anyways, it's one of those things that the further down the rabbit hole you go, the deeper it gets, and I've found that out for sure.
Oh, yeah.
With Bigfoot, because when we got into doing this side of it, you were just excited to be a part of it and everything, and then now you're kind of wondering, do I really want to know or find out what this is? It may be something that you're like, oh gosh, no, I don't want to be fooling with that no more.
Yeah.
I mean, you never can, but it's certainly a whole lot more questions than answers.
Definitely, man, and I'm so excited to see this film. I think this is it's gonna be next level, man. It's gonna be next level.
We're Alex, we're trying to take it to the next level with this one. We've honed our skills a little, and we're literally spending more time with fewer interviewees this time. Instead of doing the 23, we're going to have probably somewhere between 7 or 8, and delve a little deeper into their particular specialty, I guess you would say. And so I'm more excited as I was to get the first one out. I'm more excited to get this one done. And if you could, Alex, just listen to the hours of interviews I've got already, oh wow!
I bet, man.
What a library of knowledge. I feel like I've stolen it, although these people, did it freely. But you learn so much from them, and you're in awe sitting here getting to firsthand listen to these. I mean, goodness gracious, sit in front of Jeff Meldrum and let him talk to you for 45 minutes. That's just crazy, man.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. And, that's one reason I do, this show and go to the conferences, is to hear other people's perspectives and experiences and theories, and because I do remain very open-minded, and I just love hearing all about it, and you might hear something that makes an experience you had click or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right, yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, you definitely, you have to be open-minded in this, and you've got to be open-minded in it enough to realize, okay, I don't think you need to be leaving apples for this, because I don't think that's what you've got coming up to your house you're becoming friends with,
Yeah, there's been those stories about people getting tormented at their house and rocks thrown and all kinds of stuff like that. And then another thing...
Well, I mean...
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I mean, another thing somebody had pointed out, and we were listening to a show the other night, and I can't remember what it was, but they were talking about you need to keep in mind that if you're doing something like this, what they call habituating and everything, and then you move from the area and you've got this creature, whatever it is, Bigfoot or whatever, that all of a sudden is showing up and those people are gone, and basically the food or gifts are not being left for them, then all of a sudden you just set these people up to be tormented or harmed because they don't know that they're supposed to be doing this, and you've had some kind of interaction. And so, that's one of those things. You don't feed the bears in the woods, because the bear doesn't get fed, he's going to want to eat you,
Yep.
Anyways, it's you've got to kind of look at stuff like that. That's kind of a cautionary tale of, should you be doing this or not? You got to think about what it could do to you or to other folks, and then you got to think about, is this really something I need to be trying to habituate and be friends with? And You know, and then you have to look at it from a conservationist side and go, you know, if they are here and they do exist, then, you know, they've obviously